It's time now for Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good afternoon, all. Al, I think I'm going to start with you. You know, we've been at this for 16 days, but now the GAS and one Emily Murphy has finally decided to give the Biden transition team the nod to move forward, despite President Trump still maintaining that he could still, quote, flip the election. Al, you know, what is the long-term impact of what I would consider to be a pretty embarrassing stunt by President Trump? What could be gained with this kind of attack on this transfer of power? And just importantly, will there be any long-term consequences for those who stood with the president during this kind of charade?
Well, I guess I'd start by saying the sight of a president trying to undermine and steal an election that he lost by 6.1 million votes and growing is pretty incredible for the greatest democracy in the world. But realistically, you know, his behavior in the last 3 weeks hadn't been much different than it has been over the last 4 years. The good thing is that this will pass. On January 20th, we'll have a new president, and the Biden administration can begin to repair the damage. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any great damage unless, of course, he continues on and instigates violence among his supporters, but I suspect that won't happen. The greatest damage may be internationally, where we can't really call ourselves a poster boy these days for democracy. And, you know, we've done a lot of damages to the alliance. But the good side is the courts and state election officials of both parties have proved that our institutions work and stood up against the president, rebuked him. And so we are going to have a transition. And again, President-elect Biden is, I think, pretty reassuring to our allies and to countries around the world. Everybody knows him. He's a fervent internationalist. So I think just when he takes the office, a lot of the damage of the Trump administration will begin to mitigate. I think his annex, Trump's annex, you know, as crazy as they are, will probably just deepen the political divides in the country. But because if there's a great story in the Wall Street Journal today that showed all the fast-growing, economically growing, college-educated counties went for Biden, and sort of the dragging economically counties with heavy blue-collar workers went for Trump. And those divides, his annex are likely to exacerbate those. But frankly, you know, the sheep in the Republican Party who stood with him, I don't think they're going to take much political damage.
Greg, what's your take? Any political damage down the road for the GOP?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's great that we finally got a official transition staff up and running and funded. It'll take some time. It's certainly causing a delay, and that's really to the detriment of everyone, a delay in terms of getting people security clearances ready to go to work on January 20th. So there are those kinds of consequences. I suspect that down the road, what Trump did by delaying this will no longer be really a news story. The new administration will take hold. But I do think it's an unfortunate period in our history where what has been historically for the world to watch, a smooth transition of power, was disrupted by this decision to delay. As for political consequences, I'm not sure, you know, how great those would be. I do think that President-elect Biden has been able to work with the leaders in Congress that he knows so well. That's obviously important. But for his appointment process, there's clearly going to be a delay getting this through confirmation. And there is a price to be paid for that, I think.
Craig, staying with you, just yesterday, we saw the first wave of cabinet nominations from the incoming president. How does this new freshman class look to you? Are any surprises there? It seemed like there were quite a few new faces for most Americans, and it looks like a lot of diversity.
I thought the choices from Biden's perspective demonstrate that he's selecting people he knows, he trusts, he can work with. There is no really greater choice of, more importance than getting people who can come together and work effectively together. If there was one choice that was a little hard for me to understand, it was the choice of John Kerry. I know he's spent a lot of time on the climate control issues, but surely there are people that might be, jumping a generation ahead. I guess he's, well known to Biden, and they're comfortable together. That one I didn't understand. That looked a little more political than some of the others to me.
Al, what are your thoughts? Any surprises?
I guess not really great surprises. I mean, Janet Yellen may have been a little bit of a surprise, but when you think about it, it really is not that surprising. When I look at what he's done for both the White House staff and the early cabinet appointments, I find it pretty reassuring, and I think that's something the country needs. They do look like America. It's a diverse group, but that's important for Biden for his own political base. But more importantly, they're all qualified. They're serious. They're experienced, and they're prepared for the job that they're going to do. They're ready to tackle the new challenges. They've all worked with the president-elect in the Senate and in the Obama administration. I found it really striking the way in their press conference, at least on the foreign policy side, they focused on their loyalty to the country and not just to the president. Ron Klain, who's the chief of staff, has important experience in leading the effort against Ebola, which will be very important to start out the administration. Tony Blinken, the designee for Secretary of State, was Biden's staff director in the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. He's been with him forever. He's been in both in the National Security Council and Deputy Director or Deputy Secretary of State. As Craig mentioned, Janet Yellen has gotten a good reaction in the market. And the other important thing about her is she was an Obama appointment, but she got bipartisan support. 11 senators voted for her confirmation. Republican senators voted for her confirmation. I think after all we've been through and watching, the State Department deteriorate and cabinet secretaries sort of bow to the will of the president and whims of the president, this crowd is going to be reassuring to most Americans, and I think we really need it.
Craig, maybe going back to you for a second. Do you see the Republicans trying to create a roadblock for some of these people? Mitch McConnell has been very strategic about using his powers to make lives miserable. What's your take?
Well, I certainly hope that Republican-led Senate doesn't become a roadblock. That's not going to serve anyone's interest. They have the responsibility of confirming nominees, but that responsibility goes to the capabilities of the individual and the experience of the individual. Are they fit for the position for which they've been nominated? Not some kind of a political criterion. And I think that Al's point was an important one. The fact that they would choose somebody, that Biden would choose somebody who's already had Republican votes in the Senate is a good thing. And he's a very skillful President-elect Biden. He knows the Senate well, and I would hope that they could move these through fairly swiftly. At this point, for the good of the country, especially since there was a slowdown in this whole process going for these last several weeks.
Al, you have the last word.
In the end, unless there's somebody who really causes political heartburn on the other side, that he'll be okay. Somebody mentioned that he was the only Republican senator to go to Joe Biden's funeral. So the president-elect has you know, long history with Senate Republicans and Senator McConnell. And I hope in the end that it pays real dividends.
Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.
You're going to have